Hello, and welcome to your Ultimate You, the podcast. And I'm your host, Jessica Barrett. And we're thrilled to welcome back our very special guest star, Sarah Morris, from season 5. It's time to have a catch up and see what she's been up to since her last visit. Tune in for the fun and insightful conversation. And don't forget, this episode will be available visually on YouTube as well as hosted on all podcast hosts such as Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple. And of course, let's just begin. So we're going to get stuck in, my lovely. How are you? How have you been since season 5? That's ages ago. Wow.
Can you remind me when season 5 was, Jessica?
Yeah, now you're asking me. Very good question. Great question. We're season 8. So I've done season 7 this year. Last year would have been season 5 last year.
So at least a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, a lot has happened in a year. It's actually, I just said to a friend that I think this year I could label the year of transformation. So it's been a big year for me, and I'm fine. I'm really, really good. But the year didn't start out like that, I have to admit.
Do tell more if you wish to. I
Of
can
course.
relate because mine certainly didn't either.
Oh yeah, no, I ended up at the turn of the year, at the end of the last year, in a state of burnout, I would say. Just a very quick recap. I've been working for 20 plus years as an executive coach. And then in 2018, I started the Tudor Travel Guide, which was supposed to be just a hobby, which snowballed into a business. And actually, earlier last year, so earlier on in 2024, I co founded my third business, Simply Tudor Tours, which is created, well, our strapline is created for Tudor history lovers by Tudor history lovers. So we have created a business that allows us to welcome people from around the world to come to in-person tours here in the UK and to visit some amazing places associated with Tudor history. So there I was with three plates spinning. The Tudor Travel Guide, I'd started a membership called the Ultimate Guide to Exploring Tudor England, which had proven to be an utter IT nightmare. And it really sapped my energy and also finances. And I suppose all of that combined together after working really hard for the last few years had left me at the end of last year in a state of feeling really overwhelmed and pretty exhausted and burnt out. And it's kind of a feeling I recognize because that happened to me, what, 25 years plus ago when I came out of being a medical doctor. I left medicine because I was burning out. And so I kind of recognized the signs, and I was finding that I was just spending hours upon hours upon hours sitting in front of my computer. And I just got to the point where I was thinking, particularly this time of life, I'm 54, and I think things happen at this time of life, both physically, but emotionally, mentally, where things that had meaning for you before, things that you had energy before begin to change fundamentally. And I think it was a perfect storm of several years of really kind of soul searching around what did I want to do with the next 20 to 30 years of my life, combined with this sense of overwhelm and approaching burnout that made me really take stock. And in January of this year, I went on a brief holiday to Wales, where I'm hoping to relocate to. And I just stepped away from the computer. I stepped away from my phone. I turned everything off. I just took a couple of really good books, my yoga mat, and I did a lot of reappraising about where I was, what I was prepared to put up with, and what I needed to have in life going forward in order to be well, actually, well and healthy.
Wow. The fact you've even got that sense of self-awareness to be able to stop yourself and go and take yourself away to have that break is incredible. And most of us go through our lives and don't even have that. So that's phenomenal in itself. And I hope when you've taken that time, that very much needed break of reflection and soul searching, identity searching, and just being present with yourself, away from the hustle and bustle of social media, computers, the rat race, all of it, without the pressures of everything, expectations, society. It's exhausting. It's
Yeah.
exhausting. I'm so grateful you were able to do that.
Yeah, it is exhausting. And as I mentioned, I think midlife is a
Mm,
particularly turbulent time of life. Actually, and I fold into this, of course, not just this sort of spiritual and emotional inquiry about who am I and what I want to have in my life, but I'm really keen to talk about menopause with people because it's a subject that does not get aired enough. There's so much more said about menopause than there ever has been. But I entered that phase of life at the beginning of my 50s. So probably 51 was when it really hit me. And nobody had ever spoken to me. I mean, I'm a medic, for goodness sake. And I can tell you right now that when I trained as a medic, I don't know whether it's changed, but you had zero training on menopause, which is incredible when you think that it affects 50% of the population and in a deeply significant way for many women.
mm.
And it's been such an interesting journey for me. And actually now, because being me, I'm eternally curious. That's why I'm a coach. I love learning, I love development. If I've got a problem, I'm all over it in terms of reading about it, researching about it, looking at YouTube videos, looking at papers and books. And so usually I find that I can find my way through if I apply myself to understand what's going on. And I spent a lot of time understanding what menopause is actually about and what I can do about it. And that's what I've been busy doing this year. I've been busy completely transforming my health. I'm now stronger and fitter than I think I have ever been, certainly that I can remember in the last sort of 30 years at least. And I've completely rebalanced also my approach to work and life. So I have much stricter boundaries
Good.
around what I take on, what I say no to, and how long I spend in front of the computer. And kind of all of that together has been quite a ride, quite a revelation.
Mm.
And in fact, I now look back at menopause as one of the greatest invitations we women get. And I say that because as a woman, literally, when your ovaries pack up, there is you all, and I'm sorry if I'm allowed to swear, but I heard this quoted and it made me laugh out loud. So I'm going to say what she said because it just made me laugh. Your body goes to shit overnight, basically. One day your skin is glowing and it's wrinkle free. Your body's got the right body composition and shape, and you've got clarity, you've got energy, and literally the next day it just seems to depart. And so it's a real wake up. Whereas I think men are less fortunate in some ways. Their decline happens very slowly and
Mm.
gradually over a couple of decades. And so I think it's more easy for them not really to have that health wake up call. It's literally, for me, it was a slap around the face. And I suddenly realized if I don't really get on top of my well-being and my health, mental, physical, now, it's going to get harder and harder and I'm going to regret it. Whereas, as I say, I think for men, it's easier just to, you know, to not notice the decline because it's much more gradual.
Yes.
So wow, I see it now as being the best invitation to health that I've ever had. And I've spent a lot of this year really working on my health and well-being, and I'm very grateful for it.
Good. I'm so grateful you've been able to transition your mental approach to it and your outlook to it, perception, because we, as women, we all will at some point go through the menopause in one way or another, and that is, and I say it lightly because it doesn't affect every single woman for individual reasons. Um, yeah, and when our ovaries do say, I'm done, I've had enough, I've had the best life, I can't even comprehend right now, but I know it's there. And I'm so grateful that women like yourself that are raising that awareness because it needs to be spoken more of. I feel it's more of a transition than any other stage of a woman's life because it's not just a year. It's not just when we get our periods. It's a tough gig, especially as a teenager with everything else that's going on, but you learn to manage it over time. Menopause is it can last a decade and each day can be different and it affects women so differently. So some you hear the horror stories, I do hear them all the time, and I don't very often hear the positive. Your light that you've just shared with us has given us there is hope. Yes, it will be challenging, and it's how you approach that challenge, how you gear yourself up for it and look at it as though it's a transition. It's a beautiful transition to the next stage of your life, your evolvement, and your growth. I love that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I didn't get much sort of, even though I'm a medic,
Mm,
obviously I know about menopause, but I didn't have many personal stories. Family didn't share the stories with me. And yes, you do have a huge spectrum of how people are impacted. Um, but most people are impacted in one way or another to a degree.
yes.
And even if you're not impacted by the symptoms, the loss of estrogen in the body does have a big impact on your bone health, your muscle health, your cardiovascular health, your brain health. And actually, you know, it's really good to get forewarned and forearmed. And there are things you can do even before you go into perimenopause that will get your body in the optimum place to progress through that period and come out the other side in the best place possible. So yeah, I think I'm just, it's a subject I'm really passionate about. And I talked, I don't know whether people sometimes get embarrassed by it, but I bring it up and I talk to men about it and I
Yes,
just put it out there because the more people know about this and can and do something proactive, the better.
absolutely. And whether people get embarrassed or not, that's understand it. It's a reaction. That's with them. It's with women like you, with people like ourselves. We need to stand up and hold that space. We'll understand it's embarrassing. It might be a taboo subject, but eventually it needs to not be because, as you said, 50% of the population go through it. And it's only in recent times in law now that it's a protected factor in work. Hello, where have you been for the last 50 years since women have become a quote unquote equal? Not, still got a long way to go, but that's a whole other debate.
Oh, I mean, I still hear horror stories of how my friends and their friends, when they go to ask for HRT, you get such a disparate response from GPs. Some GPs are all over it, and like my GP, he's very clued up on menopause, HRT, testosterone replacement, etc. And I have no problem. Mind you, if I did have a problem, he'd have a fight on his hands, I can tell you. But I've got friends who've been and they've just been point blank sort of refused certain aspects, particularly testosterone replacement. Or, I've heard horror stories of doctors, hospital doctors, telling a woman who'd gone in to have a breast lump examined that if only women would come off this ridiculous hormone replacement therapy. And I mean, just the disparate level of knowledge and understanding and approach
Mm,
is still in the medical profession alone is still horrifying. But luckily there's some great people out there who
yes.
are really fighting the corner. Louise Newsom was actually I went to the Newsom clinic, a fantastic service. People like Louise are just banging the drum and they are changing the way things are.
Good, and may she keep banging forward and others join that drum banging because it needs to happen. And change doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. It takes a long time, and it doesn't take one voice, it takes a whole choir. We need to raise each other up rather than tear each other down. And old stereotypes of why you get these ridiculous, as you say, responses from even medical practice is because it's entrenched in 30 years mindset or knowledge or research. Come on, it's the research is constantly evolving. And so are women, and so are we. And it needs to be explored and talked about more and raised. And in fact, if we can share this and equip our younger generations, it's not going to be such a taboo subject. It's not going to be, oh my goodness, that's now happening later in my life. It will be part of, as soon as you're younger, you're told about your periods, you expect it to happen. If you give them that knowledge, they'll know when they're 20s. I know I'm going to be at some point in the next 30 years potentially going through the menopause, and it will help them make potentially better choices for themselves. Like you said, equip yourself before you go into the perimenopausal stage, which I don't think I'm far off, especially as I have one ovary. Thank you very much. My lovely right ovary. As a previous episode, I explained that I went through a suspected cancer journey. Benign, I'm grateful, but I have one ovary, and I'm grateful for my one ovary because it will keep me ticking for a little longer. And I'm now aware that I will be having my transition perimenopausal and menopausal earlier. And
Mm.
it's what you can do now. So doing the things like the simple thing of drinking water. Wow. Amount of people that don't drink water, at least 2 liters a day. Simple. Getting a better night's sleep. Every little change that you can make is not hard. It really isn't. And it's about the excuses we give ourselves. Oh, well, I can't, I can only just do it. Just do
It
it.
is, yeah. Yeah. And I've got to put in one more thing that if somebody said to me, what is the one thing you could do for yourself? It's resistance training. It's build your muscles up. They are not just a thing that supports you. They're actually metabolically active and they're really important in your hormonal health
Mm.
and in your metabolic health. And once you hit menopause, your ability to put down new muscle declines rapidly. So the more muscle you can build up when you still have your full complement of estrogen, the better off you'll be later down the line. So that would be my pitch to anybody who's thinking, well, what can I do? That would be one of the things I would say.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's something I do now. I actively muscle train and building muscle, because I feel like I'm at the very late stages of my 30s. I'm going to be 39 in a few months. I've noticed a hormonal shift in me anyway, regardless of whether it's one ovary or I'm becoming into perimenopause. I don't know yet. I'm just going with it. I'm going to see what happens. And something the fact you've just mentioned that is what I did started 3 months ago. And I see the hormonal balance in me already because of that muscle training. I feel better inside. The bloating is far less.
Yeah.
And I love it. Love it. Absolutely
And
love the
it,
feeling after a good workout.
yeah, it's great. I mean, that's one of the things so let's kind of go back a little bit. What have I changed this year? Well, I used to get up really early and I would, have a cup of tea and I'd come in here and I'd sit down in front of the computer and I might be working by 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, and I'd do 2 or 3 hours before sort of breakfast time, really. Now that is sacrosanct time and
Mm.
it's only for health. I don't do anything now unless I've got to go out, like I'm going to meet somebody
Yes.
kind of at Hampton Court, for example, as I did yesterday, and I don't have time. But whenever I'm at home, and if ever I can, those first few hours are all about getting up, going down to the gym, doing the resistance training, or going for a run and doing my yoga, or doing something for fascial health. But that's what I do. And I don't do anything to do with work until that is done. So literally, I think that's one of the biggest things I've changed in the last 12 months. I started the journey about 12 months ago, doing resistance stuff, started at home. And then about 3 or 4 months ago, I got myself a gym membership because I was just sort of outgrowing my little room, my little bedroom with my few dumbbells. And yeah, I thought, you know what, actually, I want to take this to the next level. And that's been the single biggest thing. Health now is my priority and everything else comes next. And you know what I found, Jessica? It hasn't made a heap of the difference to my output in work. In fact, the fear being, oh my, much done. Things are going to start slipping, plates are going to start falling off those poles that they're spinning on. It just hasn't happened. It just hasn't happened. And I still find I get done what I need to get done, and nobody dies because I go to the gym in the morning, and I feel so much better.
Mm.
generally speaking. I mean, I still have a little bit of a time because I've got some energy issues, and I need to, sometimes I can slightly overdo it and then I'm left feeling a little bit washed out. So it's a huge learning curve for me, and I'm constantly sort of listening to people who know what they're talking about to try and fine tune and find that real sweet spot where you are improving your health, you're improving your sort of your muscle bulk, as well as your health, your mobility, your balance, cardiovascular health, but you're not draining yourself. And at the same time, as I say, work hasn't suffered. In fact, in some ways, it's improved. Not surprisingly, maybe.
No, not surprisingly, and yet we'll go down that place before we think, oh, we need to implement something else into our life. Well, it's all going to go to pot. No, because you made the most, I stand by this, by the way, poignant point. You said your health comes first. It does, hands down. Anything else in anybody's life does not matter until your health. Your health is your number one asset. Without it, you have nothing.
I agree.
Without it, you have nothing. Get
I
your health to the best where it can be in each and every day. And it is an ongoing journey. It isn't something that just stops or you go to the gym one day and yep, bang, you're done. No, it's ongoing. It's always about fine tuning. And some days are going to be different and you're going to need to do something else another day. That's okay. Your health is everything. When you've got your health, everything else then flourishes around you because you're available.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I was listening to Chris Evans, as I often do on the morning, because he's a great inspiration in the morning. It was something like, the better you are, in yourself, the better you will do. And, you can't be your best self if your body is not its best self. I
Yeah.
think it's just impossible. And I think obviously you've had a health scare. So,
Yes.
I think when you've had a health scare, that is, the importance of health is really brought home to you.
Mm.
And now it's interesting for me, of course. Now I am doing this, and I'm a coach as well. And that the first excuse people come up with is, I don't have time. My sister even said this to me the other day. I said, Deb, you have time if you make time and you make it your priority. And I completely true. I totally. Anything else is just an excuse.
It is. It is. And the biggest excuse reason people give is always first. I don't have time. I don't have time. And then I explain to people what I do in life, which is lots of different lovely things. And then they tell me, I had said yesterday, sometimes I get emotionally overwhelmed with what I do, but I remind myself, I bring myself back down, do some grounding work, and then I can continue because I have the foundations in place. My health is everything. And then I had a response yesterday because she cannot relate and said, you cause me emotional overwhelm by listening to all you do. And I said, wow, okay, well, I hear you. Well, that's where you are. And that's because you cannot relate to me. And I will not meet you down at that level of negativity. I will acknowledge you, but this is where I am, and that's because I'm good at this and I own this. So everyone's different, and if people can't relate to you in a positive light, society and everyone else's expectations will bring you down so that they can try and match you and relate to you. Don't ever, that's an expectation I'm still working on, is that boundary is not to go down to a level to meet someone else. That's everything to do with them. I refuse to dim my light. In fact, I will hand them a pair of sunglasses if they cannot handle my energy. It's the best way. I love that phrase. I cannot remember who said it, but she was like, if someone can't, don't ever dim your light for anyone and just hand them a pair of shades. So
Yeah,
for
that's
anyone
really
watching this or
true.
listening, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, forgive me for not being able to give the name of the woman who quoted, I'm quoting. She's phenomenal. Yes.
Brilliant. I love that. I love it. I
But
love it. Yeah.
yeah, don't let anyone dim your light for any reason. But that
No.
excuse, I don't have time. I will give the answer to you always, time is a choice, and you choose what you do with that time. It's a
Yeah,
choice.
absolutely. Yeah. And I find the really hilarious thing, I laugh at myself because as a medic, obviously, you might expect that I spent quite a lot of time in the past talking to people about how important it is to get healthy and well, and to do exercise. And yeah, it's like, who knew it actually works? Um, that's what I find quite amusing. But as over the months, as I've built up my strength and watched myself gain more cardiovascular capacity, more strength, feeling stronger, and actually, interestingly, again, I suppose this isn't a surprise, but the stronger you get, actually, the more confident you get as well. It absolutely does affect your mental health in a positive way. I feel stronger and more resilient than I might have done. And I wouldn't say I wasn't a resilient person, but just purely the physical well-being creates more of that sense. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, who knew physical exercise makes you feel better? There you go, folks.
I
Stop
know.
press.
Exactly. And we hear it all the time. We're talking about all the greats. They all say it. It releases, and it's medically, scientifically proven, hands down, everyone knows it. It releases endorphins in your brain. Those endorphins make you feel good. Oh, I get up sometimes. I can't be bothered. I'm just like, trying all the excuses in the world. And then I'm like, no, I try and put myself into the mindset of how I'm going to feel after. Then I get my gym stuff on. I drag my backside downstairs and I work out. I do go to the gym. I do lots of different sorts of classes and stuff, but I just put myself in that mindset. Gonna feel
Yeah,
good. And I feel great right now because I had a great PT session literally an hour ago. So I'm bubbling. So it works. It's true. Who
it does
knew?
work. Yeah, yeah, yeah. As they say, just Nike it, i.e. JFDI.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful.
Oh, it's been lovely, lovely having you back here, Sarah. And as one of your biggest fans, because I loved Tudors, I'm a huge Tudor history individual. In fact, yeah, I love history. And that's how I came across you because of your passion for Tudor history and your, owning that torch, that light for so many other passionate historians to come forward and just listen to you and hear like the knowledge that you have and being able to raise awareness. We have so much in the UK. It's phenomenal. So thank you for that as well. And thank you for sharing more about menopause. It's really important and keep banging that drum. We need to keep going.
I will. I mean, it's funny, isn't it, that we both share a love of Tudor history, but when we speak, we don't really speak too much about Tudor history, which is quite nice for me.
Yes.
I do love what I do with the Tudor Travel Guide and with Simply Tudor Tours. I get to get into all sorts of interesting places and talk to fascinating people who know about their heritage, experts, etc. But it was also nice to be talking about a subject I've got really, really passionate about over the last 12 months.
Absolutely, because your Tudor is part of you, but you, Sarah, you're authentic right now. It's so important to just reconnect with our authentic self and just share what it is we're going on right now, what we're feeling, what we're going through or experiencing. And that in itself is therapeutic. So important. And I'm glad and able and honored to be able to hold that space for you.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much for the invite. What a pleasure.
You're so welcome. It's wonderful to have you back. Wish you continue success with your health journey. Keep going. And as
I
I
will.
say, hopefully one day, well, I'd love to have you back for another catch up in a few seasons' times. Who knows? But thank you
Well,
so
that would
much.
be good because there are other things in the pot as well, more to
Ooh.
do with the menopause and the midlife stuff. So we could perhaps come and talk about that at some point.
Oh, I'm excited. Yes, please. I'd like that. Thank you so much.
Okay, wonderful. Let's do that then. It's a date.
I love it. Lovely. Well, thank you again. And thank you to the visual viewers and, of course, audio listeners. You've been sensational. Sincera is sensational. And I will close this wonderful episode. And we will have another incredible woman sharing her story with you in the next episode. Take care and thank you. Bye.
Bye.